Hi there, everybody. Welcome to another album review. My name is Christian Eschbach. All right, folks. This is the last album I'm covering in the Anno Domini set for Black Sabbath, and this is the Forbidden album. This was the last album released by Black Sabbath under the Black Sabbath title until the reunion album 13. When I do my recap of Anno Domini, I'm going to probably get into this a little more in depth. But basically, the way I look at it is kind of Black Sabbath sort of went through three major incarnations. One that I consider ish. You got Classic Sabbath, then you got the Heaven and Hell Sabbath, but that has a little variation in that as well. Then you've got what I call Deep Sabbath, which only lasted for one album. And then you've got what I'm now referring to Black Sabbath Mark III. Or in this case, I call it 3.5. So this album, the lineup is Tony Iommi on guitar, Neil Murray on bass, Cozy Powell on drums, Tony Martin on vocals, and Jeff Nichols on keyboards. Jeff Nichols has actually at this point been around for a while with Sabbath and continued to stick around for a while with Sabbath. But was never officially credited as an official member until at least the Headless Cross album. That was the first time I ever saw him properly credited as one of the actual musicians in the band. This version of the band I call Black Sabbath Mark 3.5. And the reason why is Neil Murray's on bass, but Neil Murray didn't come in on bass for this particular lineup until after Headless Cross was recorded. The bassist on the Headless Cross album wasn't the right fit for touring per se, with the looks and whatnot. For such a hard rock band, he was a session musician. So that's how Neil ended up. And then when they did the Cross Purposes album, I'm going to assume that Neil and Cozy just weren't available at that time. So they had Geezer and Bobby, I can't remember his last name, in there. This lineup, though, this is a solid lineup. And this lineup is as tight and as solid as I would say either the Heaven and Hell lineup or the Classic lineup. Song-wise, songs are good. There's quite an assortment of sounds and whatnot on here. You can tell the album was released in 95, though. You got a little bit of that grunge creeped in there. You got a little of that 95 sound. And it's really interesting because when I'm comparing this to other albums that were released in 95. I'm just doing a quick scroll on my computer here because I know I don't have a lot from 95, but I've got some albums from 95, right? 95 was not exactly a great year. But when I look at albums from 95, all right, we've got AC/DC's Ball Breaker, we've got Van Halen's Balance. But the one I really kind of want to use as a comparison here is Ozzy Osbourne's Osmosis was released the same year as this was. And if I were to compare this album to Osmosis, this album overall is the better album. But Osmosis has a couple better singles. This one's got some great tracks on it. Okay, so the overall track listing. We've got Illusion of Power, Get a Grip, Can't Get Close Enough, Shaking Off the Chains, I Won't Cry for You, Guilty as Hell, Sick and Tired, Rusty Angels, Forbidden, Kiss of Death, Loser Gets It All. Okay, Illusion of Power and I want to say maybe Shaking Off the Chains a little bit. one or two other ones in there. They really have sounds that remind me of Geezer Butler, one of the Geezer Butler albums, or even a couple of the Geezer Butler albums. I actually was surprised to find out that there was no cross contamination or pollination between this album and Geezer's solo material, because there was definitely some similar stuff in there. Illusion of Power really kind of, wow, I was surprised. But the diversity on this album compared to Osmosis is just incredible. Get a Grip, great tune. Guilty as Hell I really enjoyed. Sick and Tired I really enjoyed. Rusty Angels I really enjoyed. In comparison to Osmosis, as I mentioned, released the same year, does this album have a Perry Mason on it? No, this album does not have a Perry Mason on it. There's a couple other songs on this album as well that I don't think this album has. But when you get into what we'll call like the ballads and stuff like that, or the softer songs, Can't Get Close Enough and I Won't Cry For You. If I were to compare those against I Just Want You, or See You on the Other Side, or Old LA Tonight, they don't have that commercial balladness that the Aussie ones do. But these ones I would probably listen to more often. The whole way around, I really enjoy listening to this album when it's playing. Although, as I said, there's not necessarily a lot of songs on here I'd go out of my way to listen to on their own. The Power of Illusion, it's not a bad song. It sets off the album really interesting, lets you know you're in for something different. You're going to get some multi-flavors in here. Get a Grip is a little more basic. I really dig the core riff on this one, the main riff on it. It's got that great classic hook to it, almost, I don't want to say Paranoid-like, but that idea of like that riff in Paranoid, where it's just nice, quick, fast, catchy hook. Can't Get Close Enough. This one's got some dimension to it, which is kind of cool. Shaking Off the Chains, that one, I'll be honest, a little bit kind of forgettable, just a little bit. I Won't Cry For You. This one kind of gets lost in the shuffle on the album. Guilty as Hell really kind of picks it up again, gets it going. Sick and Tired, same thing, keeps the attention going. Rusty Angels keeps the attention going as well. Really dig the guitar work on all three of those songs too. Like, those feel like some really classic Sabbath guitar-like riffs in there and whatnot in there, and some nice, cool old school Iommi soloing. Forbidden, the album's title track, honestly is probably one of the most forgettable songs on this album. Kiss of Death. Okay, so I get a chuckle out of this one because right around 1995 when this album was released, me and my buddy Drew had also wrote a song called Kiss of Death. Nothing like this song, lyrically not even close to this song. Our song was kind of cheesy and jokish, but our riff was a lot more memorable than the riff that was going on this one. And then the album finished off with Loser Gets It All, which isn't a bad way to finish the album, but it's not great. Realistically, like I said, this album's really good when you're listening to it. Listen to it back to front, let it play through. Really good, fun album that way. I don't mind it that way. Would I suggest this album as an album to go out and pick up? If you pick up the Anno Domini set, yes. Totally worth listening to and having that way. Picking the whole set, get all 4 CDs at once. Really worth it that way. To buy it completely on its own. Now, vinyl would be cool for the artwork, to have the big giant artwork that's on here, okay? So that would be cool. I really dig the artwork, the cover artwork. That's really cool. But I really don't think I would want to buy this album just on its own. While I do enjoy Get a Grip, Guilty as Hell, Sick and Tired, and Rusty Angels, it's only 4 out of 11 songs, and the rest of them, while being enjoyable, aren't anywhere near as standoutish as some of the previous efforts have been. I really think that this lineup kept getting screwed over. They either got screwed over by a Dio reunion or they got screwed over by a Sabbath reunion. Because with this being in 95, the next thing that came out was the Black Sabbath live album. The band got back together, recorded a couple new songs, blah, blah, blah. Everything falls apart. And then Iommi finally does a solo album on his own. Geezer was doing his solo albums. Well, I mean, Iommi actually did a couple. Then you get the 13 album where the band gets back together, and the 13 album just kind of leaves everybody disappointed. And I forgot about the Heaven and Hell album that was in there as well. And the Heaven and Hell album was actually really good. I really wish this version of Black Sabbath had gotten a better chance. And I really wish that this version of Black Sabbath wouldn't have kept getting derailed by reunions. It really does suck how that worked out. And unfortunately, I really just don't think we're going to get a proper run with this version of Sabbath ever again. It's definitely not going to be under the name of Sabbath. At the end of this, I really do dig Tony Martin, and Tony Martin is the most underrated. Second most? No, the most underrated of all the Black Sabbath vocalists. Obviously, Ozzy. I personally myself have given Ozzy all the credit. I always give Dio credit as one of the top masters. Then you got Ian Gillian, who was in there, or Gillian, I'm not sure how to say that one, was in there for one album. And, you know, I mean, when you're talking about the lead vocalist for Deep Purple, you know, so Tony Martin's kind of getting the bum end of the deal at this point, you know, but he's got some of the cooler tunes, man. And I know that there's the Cross Purposes live album out there, which means it won't include this album in there. And there is a Dio live album with Sabbath out there that I need to pick up as well. I'm not talking the Heaven and Hell live set. I'm talking about the actual Evil Live. And once I have those, I've only got to get 2 more Sabbath albums, and then it'll be done. I'll have everything, and I'll have it all covered. But I'm also not in a rush for those 2 Sabbath albums because of where they sit in the great zeitgeist that is Sabbath. I have to get them so I can finish it off and so I can do a big final closeout to Sabbath, but that's it. And it does kind of suck because I really should do Eternal Idol as part of this time period for doing a big Sabbath, or at least a Tony Martin era, or a Mark III-ish era. But I don't know how I'm going to go around doing that. We'll figure it out as we go. Anyways, folks, the next review is going to be the entire Anno Domini set, so stand by for that one. Thank you very much for watching, as always. Hit the like button, subscribe, and the bell for notifications. There'll be links in the comments below. Check those out, please and thank you. Other than that, peace, love, take care.